Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. Saturday. Saturday here. Can't be Saturday there. Back in time. Because they don't have court on Saturday. It's February 16th. We're at part 3. I think there's 5 parts to February as well. So, the video that we're on is about an hour long. And we've already watched 20 minutes of it. So we're only going to do like 40 minutes today. And then we'll stop. Here we go. Nan, you're getting surgery today? I didn't know this. Well, I miss everything. Listen. You're a nurse. You know you'll be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to fall asleep for a little bit, and then you're going to wake up on some good medicines, some good drugs.
We'll stand in recess. Thank you, Counsel. For the noon hour, please remember my admonitions to you. Don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't form any opinions. Don't allow anybody to communicate with you regarding the case. Don't conduct any deliberations until the matter has been submitted to you at the conclusion of the case, and we will reconvene at 1:30. Detective Phillips, you're excused till 1:30. All right, we'll stand in recess. Thank you, Counsel. All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter. Mr. Simpson is again present with his counsel. People are represented. The jury is not present. Detective Phillips is present in the courtroom on the witness stand. Mr. Douglas, you had something you wanted to address to the court.
Indeed, Your
before
Honor.
we invite the jurors to join us?
During our cross-examination of Mr. Phillips, we would intend...
We want to have him step out so you can possibly.
All right. Detective Phillips, why don't you step outside the courtroom and wait for us, please?
I didn't do it for my channel, so I have no idea.
Excuse me. One person at a time. How about it?
Again.
During the cross-examination of Mr. Phillips, Your Honor, we would like to show portions of a videotape that we received yesterday. NBC apparently rented the the Bundy condominium on Tuesday and took a tour. And among the items that they showed on the tour was the telephone with the speedy dialer with certain notations such as Daddy and Dita and Cora and Robin and Pam. And we would like to show that to Mr. Phillips, but we'd like to show the tape right now.
All right, I'd like to see it before we have, has the prosecution seen this?
No, we just got it yesterday, so we're trying to show it now.
It was shown yesterday.
It was just on TV yesterday.
It was on the Today Show.
Correct.
No, just the tape.
Without the sound.
They rented the condo, not Johnny Copper.
All right, Mr. Harris, do we have that available, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Dealing with the
Was he saying
telephone,
maybe
but
you
we're
want
just
it on
giving
there?
context right now.
Capability on this VCR.
Yes, Your Honor.
Here's our realtor.
Correct.
And she was very gracious during our view of the crime scene.
Dita-Opa, Cora, Robin, and Pam. And Dita and Opa is German for grandma, grandpa.
No, Dita is not.
Dita is
the name.
Judita.
Yes, Your Honor, I'm sorry.
All right, just that one little spot.
Correct. We want to give context so everyone can see where it comes from.
All right, can you back that up a little, Mr. Harris?
Back that up.
All right, I take it this is in the nature of a 402 hearing that we're conducting now?
Yes, Your Honor, it
All
is.
right. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Do you have some questions you want to ask of Detective Phillips?
At the appropriate time, we will be.
So can you please frame just the telephone?
Just the telephone?
Just telephone. No objection.
All right. All right, Mr. Harris, can we get up to that spot so we know that we're just frozen on?
Yes, Your Honor.
There it is, right there. All right.
Okay.
See if you can get a sharper frame. All right, anything else before we proceed?
May I have one moment with counsel, Your Honor?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Put the microphone there. Or are we ready? All right, hold on. Ms. Clark.
This witness never saw this beat up. Why are you showing this witness?
Well, they can ask if they saw it. You said you had no objection to it being shown.
And I don't mind it being shown.
Right.
The thing is that it should be shown with the witness who saw it.
Well,
Who's waiting to
Well,
testify right after?
hold on. Ms. Clark, do you have an objection to showing it?
In general, no. With this witness, the only problem is there's no foundation. There's no reason to show it to a witness who never saw it. There's nothing to be gained by it. Detective Lang, who will testify immediately after Detective Phillips, did.
What's the relevance if this witness never saw it?
Well, how do we, it may not be relevant if we never saw it, Your Honor. We know that only because of this
fact, we went up and he was told. So, who says I didn't ask him?
All right, so it's a
Deputy
three.
Phillips just told council that he didn't see it.
I said that to the council. I said that. And I'm not going to in the business of wasting time. And there'll be other officers here. As long as she represents somebody saw that speed dial.
My
Is that your
understanding
representation?
is, that is. That is.
But, as part of the cross-examination, though, you're out there. They might know that you didn't see it.
Cross-examination does have to be relevant, doesn't it?
It does.
It has to be very relevant. Well, if you're the, well, I don't want to argue it out with the witness here, but there's a point I'd like to make. When we get to that point, I'll approach the bench.
All right, when we get to that point.
Yes. Sidebar, that's the
I was
question.
going to ask for a sidebar, Your Honor, because it will
Well, I said.
Well, we're here. We're here. Well, let's talk
do
about
it
it.
now.
Okay.
So what's the relevance if this guy, look, we agree that it's probably the speed dialer that was there,
Sure, we certainly do, Your Honor.
all right?
And we agree.
What's the point? This is not the detective, this is somebody who took a cursory run-through.
Well, Judge, he was in charge for 2 hours, from 2:10 to 4:10. He was inside that house on several occasions. He wanted to know where O.J. Simpson was.
You're right.
If there's a
Okay.
speed dialer in the
You're
kitchen
right.
that has Daddy, Your
Wait,
Honor. I'm
you're
sorry.
right. I just said you're right.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, he was not inside from 2:10 to 4:10.
I understand
The
that.
testimony makes that very clear.
I understand it. But Mr. Cochran's making the point that there was the ability to just walk over to the phone if they knew, since they knew that Sydney and Justin were the children of Mr. Simpson, and if there's a daddy on the speed dialer, there was an easy way to have contacted the residents. That's the only thing that it's worth, and that'll take about 40 seconds worth of testimony.
Thank you.
Were you aware of the speed dialer? No. Did you see this phone? No, I didn't. Somebody else will come up and say what it is. It's interesting whose name is not on there. Sidebar without.
I don't think the judge was allowed to say that.
That was our one light moment for the day. All right, counsel, let's have the jury.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Record to reflect that Detective Ronald Phillips is still on the witness stand. Good afternoon, Detective Phillips. You're reminded you're still under oath. Mr. Cochran, you may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Detective Phillips.
Good afternoon, sir.
When we broke at lunchtime, I think we were going to determine or see if we could determine through either your notes or the log, which has been marked now as Defense Exhibit 1006, what time the coroner finally arrived in this matter to the Bundy location. Do you have some notes which would help you in that regard, sir?
No, I reviewed the crime log at the
And-
DA's office.
In the DA's office over the lunch hour?
Yes,
Were you talking with Ms. Clark during that time?
yes,
And with Mr. Darden?
Miss Clark.
Okay. And at that time, in reviewing that crime log, did it assist you in determining what time the coroners finally arrived at the Bundy Street location on June 13th, 1994?
Yes, sir.
And what time was that, sir?
9:10 in the morning.
And you were aware that Officer Risky first discovered these bodies sometime around 12:10 when he arrived. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This was some 9 hours after that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, with regard to, before we finally leave the tape, Your Honor, I do not believe that as we pass the transcripts out to the jury, I don't believe that we numbered that. I would ask leave now to number that 1019, defendants 1019, and the tape, the tape will be 1019, and the transcripts which the jury had will be 1019A.
All right.
Clerk, please. We've done that with the clerk over the lunch hour, Your Honor. I'd just like to go back just briefly, Detective Phillips, to that that tape that we played this morning. With regard to your statement that we kind of not following procedure. When you were talking about that, were you talking about the fact you weren't following procedure and giving immediate notification to the coroner?
No.
Okay, but you weren't following that procedure either, were you?
Yes.
At that time? Okay, but we're kind of asking a favor. Now, in saying that, you were asking this man Willis a favor at that point? The
I
coroner's
was
office?
asking a favor, yes.
Okay, let me get to it. What we're kind of asking a favor, and kind of work a little bit on this one. Remember using those words?
Yes, sir.
All right, now, when, at that point, when you told him you weren't following procedure, it was about 6:50 a.m. on the 13th, right?
Yes.
And at that point, he didn't know anything at all except there was a double homicide out at Bundy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
He didn't know whether they were males or females or whatever. Isn't that correct? At that point.
Well, at some time in the conversation, I told him they were male and a female.
I don't know if you have it before you, but this is at the very first part of the conversation. And at that point, you just said you had a double homicide, I believe.
Okay.
Okay. So he would only find out that which you would tell him. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And so, if you'd wanted to, as an experienced detective, you could have just told him that we have a double homicide out here on Bundy. We're not ready for you yet. We'll call you back, give us some numbers, and let us know how long it'll take to get out here. Isn't that correct? Could have done that, couldn't you?
It could have been done that way, sure.
Now, Tom Lang didn't instruct you, when you were doing him a favor, to go and tell him that this was the ex-wife of a very prominent sportscast star or sports celebrity. Tom Lang didn't tell you to do that, did he?
No, but I was informing the coroner's office of that.
No, the question is, Tom Lang didn't ask you to tell the coroner's office that,
No,
did
he did not.
Okay, you did that on your own, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And when he asked you, can you give me the name? That's what Willis asked you. And you said, well, you're not going to let this. And he goes and says, no, I'm an investigator. You didn't have to give him the name either, did you?
I did not have to give it to him.
And when you stopped to refer to a Tom during the progress of this tape, you were talking to Tom Lang, who was then one of the investigators from robbery homicide.
He was the lead investigator on the case.
Was he the lead investigator or was Van Adder the lead?
At the Bundy location at that time of the morning, he was the lead investigator because Van Adder was someplace else.
I see.
I totally forgot how infuriated I am with this whole part right here. Infuriated because what he's saying, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I just don't get it. I would have done exactly what the guy on the stand did. Exactly.
See, Van Adder was not there at that point?
No, he was not.
But as between the two of them, when they were both at Bundy, Van Adder's the lead, isn't that correct?
To be honest with you, Mr. Cochran, I don't know which one of those two is the lead investigator on this case. I know they're joint lead investigators. If one outranks the other or has more time, I don't know.
Okay, I want you to be honest with us.
I am. I don't know.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, when you talk to Mr. Willis on this tape, he asked you, strike that. Mr. Willis said, okay, are these both gunshot wounds? And your response was essentially, they were either shot or bludgeoned to death. Is that correct?
That's what I said.
And so, at 6:49 to 7 o'clock, at that time in the morning, you did not know how these two individuals had lost their lives. Is that right?
I made a mistake, Mr. Cochran. I should never have said that with statement without knowing how they died.
No, but I know. I understand. No, I'm not
Okay.
criticizing you making a mistake. That's not about criticizing you. I'm just asking you, at that time, you didn't know how they died, did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay, that's the point, that you did not know. So that when you talked to Mr. Simpson, sometime around, what time, 6 o'clock?
I believe it was 6:05.
You didn't know how these people had died, had you? Did you?
Did not know how they died.
All right. And so when you make the statement, they were either shot or bludgeoned to death, that was speculation on your part, but you just didn't know how they died at that point. Isn't that right?
That's right.
All right. Now, with regard to the crime scene log, since you looked at it over lunchtime, under Phillips and Furman, what time did you and Detective Furman leave the Bundy scene that morning per the log?
I don't believe it's on the log, sir.
Well, let me see. I'll approach, if I might, with 10:06. You arrived there about 2:10, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me approach. And I want you to just read this to yourself, first of all, where it says Phillips and Furman investigators. And look over there. Can you read that to yourself?
Oh, it says time left 10 o'clock. I thought you meant the first time I left the location.
No, well, does it show that you left at some point in between there?
No, it does not.
Now, isn't it the responsibility of the officer who leaves to tell the officers keeping the log that I'm leaving now and I'm going someplace else? That's your responsibility?
That's something I should have done out of courtesy to that man that was doing the log, and I didn't do it.
Okay, all right, I understand. This is not pick on you today.
No, I'm just
Okay.
telling you, I didn't tell him.
I appreciate it. So when it says that you were there from 2:10 to 10 o'clock, that's not exactly accurate, is it?
That's not accurate.
All right, and it was the responsibility of the officers that they came and went to tell the officer whose name is Cummings, I believe, who's keeping that log. Is that right?
It would have been on my best interest to tell him there was so much activity he could not keep track of everybody.
Yes. So he relied upon everybody doing their jobs and writing this down. Is that right, sir?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, at some point, though, did you and Furman leave at 10 o'clock that morning, leave the Bundy scene to go someplace?
I don't think, in recalling, that Furman and I ever left a second time together other than the 5 o'clock in the morning call. I believe I left the Bundy location at 10 o'clock, and that's probably what he put down as the time that I was leaving. Furman and I did not team up again until much, much later in the day.
All right, so where it says Furman and Phillips leaving at 10 o'clock, that's also wrong, right?
That's me leaving at 10 o'clock.
Okay, as far as you know, that was not Furman leaving at 10 o'clock.
No,
But you will agree that in the log, both Phillips and Furman are on the same line, isn't that correct?
that's true.
Now, let's, for a moment, you're talking about Furman. You and Detective Furman are very, very close, aren't you?
We've been partners for 4 or 5 years, and I've gotten to consider myself a friend of his, yes.
You are friends, you see each other off work.
Very, very rarely.
But don't you work on some kind of moonlighting jobs? Don't you do work, off-duty work with Detective Furman? Haven't you done that in the
I've
past?
done that, but we don't work together.
But you both worked and done moonlighting jobs?
Yes,
Same employers?
yes.
And over what period of time did you do that?
Maybe a year, year and a half, 2 years.
Ago, or just it lasted for a year, year and a half, 2 years?
Well, I haven't worked at that location in probably over a year, so it's
Okay.
a year and a half before that.
Okay, about a year and a half before that, and you worked at this the location. I won't ask the location. But you worked at the location for a year, at least a year, the two of you did?
I think he might have worked there longer than I did and worked there after I did. I'm not sure when he left that employment. I know that I did.
Okay, there was a period of time when you both worked at this location, right?
Both worked there, but not together, sir.
All right.
Only one at a time.
All right, but both worked for the same employer.
Yes, sir.
And that, at the time we both worked there, was at least a year. Is that correct?
I don't know how long he worked there, sir, and I don't know if I worked there a whole year. I may have. It's close to a year.
All right. But at any rate, you consider yourself a friend of his, and you've worked together for how many years altogether?
I think Mark came to the robbery unit in, I want to say probably 91. He worked up in detectives, but I did not have him as a partner at that time. He worked another table, completely separate table. So I didn't really get to know him until we worked the robbery table together. I think that was 91.
That was 91, so that would be a minimum of 3 years before this happened. Is that a correct statement? 91 to 94?
Yes.
All right. And you knew he was, but you became close and partners after 91. Is that right?
We became close as partners, yes.
Right. I understand. And so that when you received the call that morning to come out and respond to this homicide at 875 Bundy, did you tell Sergeant Rossi that you'd call Detective Furman yourself?
I always called the detectives out, so I did tell them that I would call Detective Furman and all the other detectives. I do that on every call out.
All right. But did you say specifically, don't call Furman, I'll call him?
No. I said, don't have to call anybody. I'll make the notifications, which I always do.
All right. Were you aware that Rossi made a number of other calls in addition to calling you?
I'm not aware of any phone calls that Rossi
Okay.
made.
All right. But at any rate, you then called Furman yourself. Is that right, sir?
He's the first detective I called, yes, from my residence.
All right. And what time was it that you received your call?
I believe I received my call right around 1 o'clock in the morning, minute or two before.
All right. And then what time was it that you called Detective Furman?
I believe I called him at 1:05 in the morning.
All right. And I presume at that time of morning, both of you were at home.
That's where I got him, and that's where I was at, yes.
Okay. And thereafter, the two of you then made plans to come to West Los Angeles Station. Is that correct?
I made the plans to meet him at West LA Station to pick up the homicide unit.
All right. And as I understand it, prior to that time, since 91, the two of you had been partners. Is that correct?
Well, partners in that we worked the robbery table together. There was 4 of us that worked the robbery table. I had businesses and follow-home robberies on one side of the table with a partner. Mark Furman had our street robberies and carjacking robberies, and he sat directly across from me on the other table, and he had a partner. There was 4 of us that worked that table.
All right. So when you say table, you mean like kind of like a desk or a table where you're
There's
seated?
five tables, 5 desks all together, run by a robbery coordinator
In West Los Angeles.
in West
All
Los
right.
Angeles.
So there's a period of time where you and Detective Furman were partners in conjunction with some other detectives who worked there also. Is that right?
Yes,
All right.
and we helped each other out on their cases. If he needed some help on his cases, then me and my partner would help him and vice versa. So we did work cases together, but he would help me out on my cases.
All right. And I understand that.
Okay.
And who were the other officers or detectives involved in this table, this robbery table?
Well, there was several over that period of time. One of the spots that we had there, when I say spots, one of the desks, was a trainee spot that the trainee would come in and only only stay at that position for 6 months.
This is a high-stress business, I know.
Well, I tell you, they're going to be mad at me now, but they'd stay there for 6 months, and then we'd rotate them through the rest of the tables, the burglary table and the auto table and so forth, to get them a well-rounded experience.
All right.
So that particular table moved around a lot.
All right. Who was
and-
constant? Who stayed there over the course of the from 91 to 94? Is there any detective who's been there in addition to you and Furman?
Just the coordinator is the only one that's still there that was there when Mark Furman was there, and that's the coordinator of the robbery unit,
Who's that?
Robert Tapia.
Okay. So at any rate, when you called Mark Furman at home at 105, someone you'd worked with over a period of time, someone that you knew, is that correct?
Well, yeah, he worked my homicide unit.
No, I said you knew him well at that point, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when you saw him that morning, when he got to the station finally, before you went out to Rockingham, you described, I think, yesterday that he rarely wore a jacket. Remember you saying that?
Yes.
And did he have a jacket on when you first saw him that morning?
No.
Would you be surprised to learn that later that day on Rockingham he had a blue blazer on?
It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Okay, well, did you see him at some point put on a blazer with those slacks you saw him in those pictures we saw here?
He takes it off and puts it on and takes it off and puts it on all the time. And different times he has it and different times he doesn't.
Okay, so in other words, he has a jacket, he didn't always wear it. Is that what you're saying?
He usually leaves it in the car.
All right. But he has a jacket somewhere around there,
He's
right?
always got one with him.
Okay, he has it with him. I wanted to clear that up. He has a
Yes.
jacket with him. He may not always wear it. Is that right?
Yes, he always has a jacket in the car or at the crime scene.
And so you wouldn't be surprised if you were to see him at Rockingham later that day with a blue
No,
blazer?
not at all.
Okay. Now, after the two of you got to the station, did you and Detective Furman then go in one car to the Bundy location?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and then you arrived at the location, and you described for us your arrival there at about what time? 2:10 in the morning?
Yes,
And when you got there at 2:10 in the morning, you were the senior as between you and Furman, is that correct?
yes,
In addition to being the senior, you were also kind of a coordinator of homicide activity out there, isn't that correct?
well, I'm the homicide coordinator for West Los Angeles Division. I also outrank him.
Right. So you were senior?
Yes,
And in this regard, you were senior also to Sergeant Rossi, who was there as the field sergeant at that point, right? You outrank him?
no, it's not really an outranking. We're basically the same rank because there's two different rank structures here you're talking about. One is a patrol rank structure that goes, and one's a detective rank structure. A detective 3, which I am, and a sergeant 2, which he is, I think the only reason someone might think I outranked him is because I may make a couple of dollars more a year than he does.
Or maybe that's why he thought
I'm
it.
not muted.
Why?
I
All right,
got
But
it.
I
Anyway.
think we're equally, as far as rank goes, we're basically equal. It depends on whether you're talking about a patrol function, then he would be the supervisor in charge. If you're talking about a detective function, then I would be the supervisor in charge.
All right. At any rate, once you got to the scene, this being a homicide or two homicides, you were the ranking officer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So at 2:10, from 2:10 in the morning until approximately 4:10, when we had the arrival of Phil Van Adder, you were in charge of that crime scene. Is that right?
No, I was in charge of that crime scene until 2:38 that morning when I made a phone call to Captain Gartland, and I was relieved of that responsibility of being in charge of that crime scene.
Well, let's see now. So 2:10, you were in charge from 2:10 to 2:38, right?
That's correct.
But Van Adder didn't come until 4:10, did he?
4:05, I think, 4:10, somewhere around in there.
Sometime after 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So you were still the ranking homicide detective at that scene until Van Adder arrived. Isn't that correct?
I was the ranking homicide detective at that scene, but Lieutenant Spangler outranked me and Captain Connie Dial outranked me, who were also at that location.
But aren't they like in management? You're the
Hi,
nuts and
Anthony.
bolts. You're the man who's the homicide detective. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
You're the man who's the coordinator for West Los Angeles, right?
That's correct.
All right. What you're telling us is that at 2:38, when you talked to Captain Garland, who's in charge of robbery homicide downtown, a decision had been made to transfer this case to robbery homicide because the greater proliferation of person power downtown and resources. Is that what you told us?
That's correct.
But you were still a homicide detective out there at that scene, isn't that correct?
If something needed to be done, then I would have done it. But since nothing had to be done, I wasn't in charge of anything. I was just merely standing around, as everybody else was, waiting for the homicide detectives that were in charge of that investigation to arrive.
When you were standing around out there, just standing around waiting for something to be done, did anybody ever bring up the subject, gee, we might want to determine the cause of the time of death here, because that might be important in a case, if a case is ever brought. Did you guys ever bring that up?
No,
Nobody ever thought about that?
not that we didn't think about it. Nobody
It's not
brought it
their
up.
job.
Nobody said that. Okay. Well, it's true, is it not, that at about 2:50 in the morning, you decided, you remember those regulations
Always,
in the
Donald.
police manual? You remember that section that
Always.
made it a misdemeanor not to call the coroner, and you decided, I better call the coroner, didn't you?
I didn't remember the section about being a misdemeanor, and didn't remember that at all. What I was merely going to do was make first call notification to the coroner's office about what we had. I was not requesting them to come to that location.
All right. Well, you made a call. You told us at 2:50 you wanted to make a call to the coroner's office, right?
To make first notification that we had a double homicide out in West Los Angeles, not to ask the coroner's office to respond.
Okay, let me finish the question.
Okay?
At 2:50, you were going to make a notification to the coroner's office, right?
First call notification.
All right, because as a good detective, you knew that was important to do. Isn't that correct?
I was going to do it as a courtesy. That's all I was going to do it for. It meant nothing other than to make that phone call.
Well, who are you doing a courtesy for?
Just to get one phone call out of the way.
And isn't it also, you mentioned earlier to response to one of Ms. Clark's questions, isn't there a certain question of dignity of these bodies who are laying out there when you want to also get those moved at some point?
Yeah, but even if I had made that phone call, Mr. Cochran, they still would not have had the coroner's office respond at that time.
But, sir, wouldn't they be that much further ahead if they knew at 2:50 they might get out there before 9:10? Wouldn't that be something you'd be concerned about at all as a homicide
No.
investigator?
Would have made no
Absolutely
difference
not.
upon their arrival
Exactly.
time if I'd have made that call at
It would have made no difference. They didn't come until they were called later. Didn't matter what time they were called before.
2:50, then I made it 6:50. The
All right.
coroner's office came after we told them to come.
All right, and you, so that we're clear, the LAPD controls when the coroner's office comes. That's your policy, right?
They don't come out there until we call them up and tell them we're ready for them to respond.
And you never heard that they're upset about that policy, have you?
No one's ever told me they were upset about it, and I haven't read anything about them being upset about it.
What does
All right.
it matter if they're
Now,
upset
I know
about
we try
the
to work
policy?
together better as time goes on. We try to improve things, so our response time and their response times is better for both agencies, so there's not so much downtime. I know we're constantly trying to improve things.
Try to improve your coordination. Is that in
That's
communication?
correct.
Okay. So at any rate, you had this idea to make the first call at 2:50, but Lieutenant Spangler told you don't do that, right? He gave you an order not to. Is
That's correct.
that right? And so you didn't make the call then?
I did not make the call.
Okay. And you continued to stand around at this scene. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at some point, you were shown, as Mrs. Clark took you through all this litany of places that you went, you were shown around the scene. Is that correct?
Just cursory, yes.
Okay. Well, cursory.
Shown around the scene, yes, sir.
All right. All right. And at some time you were shown inside the house. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And one of the reasons you wanted to go inside the house as an experienced homicide detective was to get a view of what was going on so that you could brief Van Adder and Lang when they came as to what you had there. Isn't that right?
No, the call, the search, not the search, the cursory look that I did through that residence was done before I made the call to robbery homicide. I was doing that because it was still our case.
Okay, I understand that. That's between 2:10 and 2:38. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's when Risky and the others showed you and Furman around. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, well, let's talk about that now. You went into the residence, I believe, through the back, through the rear part of the residence, right?
Through the garage.
Okay, and first of all, I want to clear up one thing if I can. Here, and I want to mark this as defendant's next, the 1020.
1020. All right. Is that a photograph? Mr. Cochran, is that a photograph?
Yes, Your Honor, this is a photograph of a black Jeep, and I would like very much to put D1020 on it, and I'd like to approach this witness and ask him about it. I want to show you a black Jeep Cherokee, and I want to place it right before you and ask you if,
Can you pick it up?
ask you, yes, please look at it, and ask you if that appears, that you recognize that Jeep.
I guess it's the Jeep that was in the back of 875 South Bundy. I don't remember the license number of it, and that looks like it's probably the place.
And the Jeep that you saw in the back of 875 South Bundy, that was a black Jeep, wasn't it?
Yes?
Wasn't dark green, was it?
May I? It looks like a black Jeep to me, sir.
Okay, well, let's show it on the Elmo and see if we all agree. Let's show it on the Elmo. Thanks. This is only. Now, that's the Jeep, is that correct?
Yes?
Okay, and that area around the Jeep, see that little marking in the front, right by the right front tire there? See that marking? Is that an LAPD marking of some kind?
I don't know.
One of your little
What are
rulers?
you talking about, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you look and see that? See that little marking there? I'll point it out for you. Yeah, right there. Thank you. You're being overshadowed, Your Honor. Now, is that an LAPD marking there?
I don't know what that is.
You don't know
sir.
what that is?
I can't see it well enough to
Okay, I
decide
understand.
what it is.
I understand. There was a time you could probably see that, right?
Before
You don't have to answer that. Don't answer that. Don't answer that. At any rate, that area was to the rear of the 875 Bundy location, right?
He's such an ass.
Where you saw the Jeep?
Yes.
Okay. And back there, by the way, didn't you testify wasn't there some change on the ground back there?
Yes.
And were there some dimes and pennies back at that location?
I do not recall at all what the change denomination was.
Okay. At any rate, after you went past this Jeep, you went inside the house. Is that correct?
Eventually, yes.
Okay. Now let me ask you this: was there room on the left side of that Jeep for another vehicle to be pulled alongside there, if you recall? That is on the north side of the Jeep.
I don't, I would say probably not, but then there's some awful small cars, so I'd say normally no.
All right.
What I remember, no.
Do you remember how much space was between the Jeep and the fence?
Wasn't that much space, but I don't recall what it is.
All right. Now, in looking at the Jeep, you noticed, I believe you told us, that the door was ajar of that Jeep, right?
Well, it looked like it'd been closed, but it didn't close all the way to where the lock all latched all the way. It was just ajar, maybe a half an inch or something.
He also likes to say, and you would agree with me. No, sir, none of us would.
I was going to ask you, what is your recollection? Was it about 3 inches between the door and the closing there? Is there about a 3-inch space there?
I mean, where the door didn't close all the way?
Yes, sir.
I just recall it was ajar. I recall maybe a half an inch to an inch.
All right. Somebody said it was 3 inches, they'd be wrong?
Well, I'm not saying they'd be wrong. I'm just saying my recollection is it's a half an inch to an inch. I could be wrong.
Okay, I understand that. Did you go look? Did you walk over to it and look?
Didn't pay much attention to it after I was pointed it out one time.
This is just kind of a cursory look?
That's all I did.
Okay, and then you went inside.
That's correct.
Now, when you walked inside, you remember that banister down at the bottom of the stairs? You see some ice cream there, some melting ice cream?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, let's see. This was at what time would you have gone in there? This is between 2:10 and 2:38?
Yes.
And what kind of ice cream was that?
I have no idea.
Was the name Ben and Jerry's?
Oh, I thought you meant the flavor of it.
Well, no, I meant the brand name.
I'm sorry.
Does the name Ben and Jerry's ring
It was
a
a
bell?
Ben and Jerry ice cream cup.
Okay. Can you estimate for us how big that cup was around the bottom?
Probably a couple of inches. I always thought it was, I don't like ice cream that much, I don't eat it that much, but I thought it was a 1-scoop cup.
All right. You an expert in this area?
No, not at all. Like I said, I very rarely eat ice
180
cream.
seconds.
So we shouldn't take your word, should we?
Not at all.
Johnny,
Okay.
be quiet. I'm trying to talk. It was 180 seconds of a football field.
So, but it looked like a cup. It looked like all one flavor, though, to you.
Yes?
All right. Now, by the way, at the time you saw this is between 2:10 and 2:38, right?
Yes?
This photographer, Rokar, R-O-K, for the record, R-O-K-A-H-R. He was at the scene by then, wasn't he?
I don't think he arrived until, without looking at the log, somewhere 3 o'clock, after 3 o'clock, 3...
Okay. Before we talk more about the ice cream, let me show you
Or
a
Jimmy's
report.
if you're in New York.
And ask you, I'll show you 2 reports. I would like to put you
It's
on.
almost
You may.
over.
I'll show you a report from a individual by the name of Rolf, R-O-L-F, Rokar, R-O-K-A-H-R. This report was taken on 11/22/94, and apparently it was a telephonic interview. I want you to review and read this second full paragraph. First of all, read that to yourself.
Okay.
All right. You read that to yourself?
Uh-huh.
All right, let's put with corporate, please.
It appears that way, although the prosecution repeating questions doesn't help either. All right, we're going to let this flip. And then we're going to pause for the day. I don't want to pause for the day. I wish I didn't have to work and I could just do YouTube. I just want to see someone smack someone in the huddle. Sounds like we have less static tomorrow, guys. All right, thank you so much for coming out. It just feels like every time we get into it, when we're really into it, it's over. It's time to stop. It's frustrating. But we can't really watch it all in one go. It's just so long. Thanks for coming out. I shall see you again real soon. I hope you guys have a great day. Bye, guys.